All right, peace be unto you, brothers and sisters.
Peace.
On the Lord's Sabbath day, it's a blessing to stand before you here today to bring forth the message. And we're going to start off with the covenant, the guidelines that the Lord gave us, the guidelines and the boundaries that the Lord gave us to live by. He even gave us boundaries how to deal with Him, and He gave us boundaries how to deal with each other. So, we're going to start off with Exodus 20, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. Exodus 20 and 1. And today's lesson is understanding the first fruits of Pentecost. That's the name of today's title. Understanding the first fruits of Pentecost. All right, so this is kind of preparing you, with an open mind for tomorrow, so you'll be able to grasp it much easier. All right, go ahead, my brother.
And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
Right. So now, let's go hear from Solomon, one of the wisest men ever lived, and see what he says about keeping these commandments. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, and we're going to pick it up at verse 13, because Solomon is giving us a warning that we must take heed to. Go ahead. Read.
12 and 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil.
Right, so that is the whole duty of man. So what if man failed that duty? What's going to happen to him? Let's go to the last book of the last chapter, and it's going to pretty much spell out what's going to happen to this man. So let's go to Revelation chapter 22, and we're going to pick this up at verse 14. Revelation chapter 2 and verse 14. When you get there, go ahead and read. 22 and 14.
Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie.
Okay, so that's why today's lesson is called Understanding the First Fruit of Pentecost. And that's what you want to make it into the first resurrection. You want to become part of that first fruit. Brothers and sisters, the Lord is not interested in harvesting food or give plants and animals eternal life. He uses metaphors, figures of speeches, and analogies to give a broader meaning for us to get a deeper understanding of His Word. The Lord also uses farming terminology to show us physical things for us to understand the spiritual things that points to the end of all flesh. Understanding, brothers and sisters, is deeper than knowledge. Some people have understanding, some people have knowledge of Christ, but they lack the understanding of the work of His hands. They don't understand the things that He requires of them to do in order to have eternal life. So we're going to start out our lesson today in Hebrews chapter 1. Hebrews chapter 1. See, the Father gave His plan to Jesus, and Jesus gave His plan to the angels, and the angels gave the plan to Israel. So we're going to start out with Hebrews chapter 1 and 1. Hebrews 1 and 1. Read.
God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets.
Right, so He used the prophet as a mean of communication to His people Israel. They are His messengers. Verse 2, go ahead.
Hath in these last days spoken unto us by His Son, whom He hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also He made the worlds.
Right, so He appointed Him heirs of all things. Drop down to verse 8 and let's see what that say, because a scepter of righteousness, that's what He's all about. Go ahead.
But
Verse
unto
8.
the Son He saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of Thy kingdom.
Verse 9.
Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even Thy God, hath anointed Thee with the oil of gladness above Thy fellows.
Right, so that's why He gave us His commandment. These are boundaries He set between us and Him, and between us and our brothers and sisters. So we know how to carry on ourselves, and it is up to us to meet the standard of this Bible, because we got to come to this understanding. We got to come to this level. See, we're not there yet, and that's what we got to work up to. And that's why He's here trying to teach us how to be like Him. Verse 10, go ahead.
And Thou, Lord, in the beginning had laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of Thine hands.
That's great. Now, let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. We're going to look at the plan of God. So, we keep the Lord's feast and not the feast of the Jews or the feast of anyone else, but that's part of the Father's plan that He gave to Jesus. So we're going to go to Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to pick this up at verse 1. Leviticus 23 and verse 1. All right, go ahead, my brother. So these are the feasts of the Lord. Go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feasts of the Lord.
Right, so the Lord always communicating through His prophet, and his prophet communicate to Israel.
Right.
That's how it works. Go ahead.
Which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts.
These are whose feasts?
The Lord's.
That's right. So, is creation supposed to be keeping all these feasts? Because tomorrow we're going to deal with Pentecost. Well, tonight begins Pentecost. And some people don't even know what Pentecost means. They even named their church after the name Pentecost, Pentecostal, but they have no clue what it means. But we're going to show you what it means today. Go ahead, finish that up.
6 days shall work be done. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, and the holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
So he's talking about the weekly Sabbath, which is today. This is the Sabbath. That's why we keep today. And this is pointing to the end of man. Go ahead.
These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons.
Right. So you got to keep them in their season. You can't have them every first Sunday or once a month. It's like, how do you keep a track of your age if you keep celebrating your birthday every single month? Boy, you'd be old. So that's why the Lord said, keep it in its season. Everything has a season, even the fruits that we eat. Certain time of the year we can't get no watermelon, right? Same thing with the Lord. Feast days, we got to keep it in its season. Go ahead, read all the way to verse 5.
In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover.
Right. So bring up the picture of the plan of God, the history of mankind. The history of mankind. I'm going to show you the plan of God, and it's never changed, brothers and sisters. He's always reminding us. He reminds us every year when his Passover comes up, when he passed over your sin. So we're going to show you man's history real quick. Okay, good. You can see the board clearly, right? All right, so we know, let's hold this spot right here, and I want to show you something real quick. Brother Donnell, we're going to go to Genesis. I know this is a little, you probably never was expecting this, but that's what we do. So I'm showing you the creation to show you that the things that the Lord did has not changed. Even when it comes to his feast. So we're going to go to Genesis 1 and 3. So the Lord create, this is, y'all can see, right? This is a creation. So the Lord created man in the 6th day. And the 6th day that man was created, he sinned. But the Lord gave him 7,000 years, right? So man's first day is the 6th day. But the Lord still rests on the 7th day. So this 7th day right here represents man's rest. But the Lord gave him 7,000 years to get it right. So at the end of 7,000 years is the Father's kingdom. So here we celebrate the first night of unleavened bread, right? But before we get into unleavened bread, didn't we baptize? So when we got baptized, your past sins are washed away, and you're supposed to walk sin-free for 7 days, preparing for the Father's kingdom, which is the 8th day. So, on the 8th day, there will be no more flesh and blood. So, when Jesus returns, he's going to return in the 6th day. He's going to return sometimes in the 6th day. Don't know exactly when. But when he returns, he's going to rule this earth for 1,000 years. And we're going to see that he calls out his feast while we were in the wilderness.
That's right.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
So give me verse 3. So the Lord create light.
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 3.
And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
Okay, so the Lord create that light, but that light could not show a difference between time and season. That was a constant light. Remember now, the Lord, he shines like the sun. So he don't need no light where he's at. So remember, there was darkness first before he created that light. Go ahead.
And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness.
So he's showing us a difference. So he's a teaching God. So he's always demonstrating and showing his creations the difference when it comes to night and day. So he's showing us that. Keep going.
And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night.
Right. So the first thing he created, the darkness was already there. Then he created the light to show you a difference between night and day. So everything was created on a day. So a day equal a week, and a week equal a month. So a week is 7 days, right? Some days, someone carry 31, some carry 28. If you go by the Gregorian calendar, but if you go by the Hebrew calendar, it's like a 30-day cycle between 28 and 30 days. So the Lord all the time showing us, pointing to the end of the creation and what we're supposed to become. You finish verse?
In the middle of verse 5.
Okay, finish up verse 5.
And the evening and the morning were the first day.
So the evening and the morning was the first day. Drop down to verse 14. So when we get deeper into the scriptures and showing you where the Lord start doing this count, it will give you a better understanding that you always start off a day with the nighttime, and you have the daytime. The nighttime and the daytime give you one day. So that's how God look at his days. All right, so you finish verse 5. Drop down to verse 14. Read 14 and 16.
And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years."
So these lights are for signs and for seasons. See, he did not use the light that he created in Genesis 1 and 3, because that light wasn't good for, day, for season and for time, because man needs time. So he had to create a lesser light to show you that when his day begins. His day begins when you can actually see it. It comes in when it's dark. Man, new day begin at 12 midnight, when you can't see it, when you're asleep. Go ahead.
And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so.
And it was so. Go ahead.
And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also.
Okay, so he created these things so you can recognize his Sabbath. You can recognize is the time when he calls Pentecost, which is tomorrow. You can recognize Tabernacle, Passover, all these different times. If your Sabbath is floating, brothers and sisters, there is no way you can nail it down because it's going to keep floating. And you're going to miss out. So the Lord is letting you know when he created everything, and everything was created on a day. So you got to go by the precedents that the Lord set. Where we at?
That was the end of verse 16.
Okay, great. Drop down to verse 26. So even on the sixth day, he created man. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Sixth day, and that very same day, man sinned. Go ahead.
And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth.
All right, great. So now drop down to, we're going to go to chapter 2, and we're going to read 1 and 2. And we're going to show you that the Lord rests on the seventh day. If man even didn't sin on the sixth day, the Lord already set a precedence that man only have 1,000 years. Because man was created before the Sabbath. So the Sabbath was created after, so the Sabbath governed the man. So that's why it's so important we are here today keeping the Sabbath, because the Sabbath governs man. Go ahead.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made.
He rested on the seventh day. You see unleavened bread, seventh day. You see tabernacle, seventh day. We will not go beyond 7 days, brothers and sisters. That is good. So we're going to go back to Leviticus chapter 23, and we stopped at verse 5. So we're gonna move on to Colossians chapter 1. So I just gave you the background. So once we start going through the scriptures now, it should come pretty much clear to you when a day begins and when a day ends. So we're going to go to Colossians chapter 1 and verse. That's good. Okay, so Colossians 1 and 15, because Christ have preeminence over all things, even the feast days, and he's the head of the church and the firstborn of all flesh. So we are looking at Christ, because those that are Christ at his coming, if you belong to Christ, you will be prepared for his coming. And his coming should not surprise you. Colossians 1 and 15. Go ahead.
Who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature.
Go ahead.
For by him were all things created that are in the heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him.
So without him, nothing was created. Go ahead.
And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence.
Right, in all things he has the preeminence. He is the first. Go ahead.
For it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell.
Some fullness dwell.
All fullness.
So there is nothing that exists without him, and in him and through him. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter 20. Ezekiel 20. Ezekiel 20. And we're going to pick this up at verse 9, because the Lord had to remind Israel that he brought them out of Egypt. And they didn't come out of Egypt on their own power, because every so often Israel forgot who brought them out of Egypt and why they were in the wilderness. So he has to remind them. So we're going to pick this up at verse 9. Go ahead.
But I wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted before the heathen, among whom they were, in whose sight I made myself known unto them, in bringing them forth out of the land of Egypt.
So your behavior, your expression can pollute the Lord's name if you're not operating in the Lord's stead. Go ahead.
Wherefore I caused them to go forth out of the land of Egypt, and brought them into the wilderness. And I gave them my statutes, and showed them my judgments, which if a man do, he shall even live in them.
Right, so that's why we read the commandment to you every week, so that you can live in these commandments, because these commandments give you life. And that's the only way you can please the Lord, because these are the boundaries that he has set for us. Go ahead.
Moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths, to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that sanctify them.
Right, so he gave them his Sabbaths, with S, Sabbaths. So tomorrow is one of his high days, starting tonight. So the heathen doesn't recognize the Lord high days, which mean nation, because if they did, then they wouldn't be celebrating the thing called Pride Day. What's so prideful about that? Is that pleasing with the Lord if you call yourself Christians, Christ-like? Go ahead. Oh, drop down to verse 20 and go ahead.
And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God.
Right, so the Sabbath is between the Lord and his people who keep it, just like the circumcision. The circumcision wasn't just given to you for the sake of giving to you. It's also that bloody handshake, that sign between you and the Lord. Every time you go into the male go into the restroom, you look down, oh, yeah, the Lord gave me that. That's his commandment. Yeah, it's not decoration. It's there to remind you of his covenant. So that's good. Let's go to Exodus 23. Exodus 23, because the Lord uses the gathering of crops as a metaphor to show us that he is interested in the ingathering of his people. at the first and the last resurrection. So we call the ingathering also, we call that tabernacles. But that's what the Lord is all about. So Exodus 23. Exodus 23. Exodus 23. And we're going to pick this up at verse 14. 23 and 14. 23 and 14. So the Lord wants us to observe these feast days. And when Moses written Exodus, where was Moses? In the wilderness. So the Lord is calling these things from the wilderness. Go ahead. Go ahead and read.
3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month Abib, for in it thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty.
And none shall appear before him empty. You notice the Lord said 3 times a year, thou shalt keep a feast to him. When he called this out, we weren't in the land. We was in the wilderness.
That's right.
He said 3 times a year we're supposed to keep it. So, before Jesus was crucified, we keep Passover as a feast. Mm-hmm. We keep the blowing as trumpet as a feast. But here, he's setting the precedence 3 times a year. But this was before Jesus came and changed the ordinance of the Passover. So, he's setting the stage. Where we're at?
Verse 16.
Go ahead.
And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and in the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field.
Right. So the feast of harvest, that's tomorrow, tonight. The ingathering, that's tabernacle in the new book. So again, he's going to tell us that the mirror ain't supposed to appear before him with their hands empty. Go ahead.
3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread.
Okay.
Neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning.
Okay, go ahead.
The first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God.
So he's talking about Pentecost, Feast of Week. The first of the first fruit. That points to Jesus. Okay, so that's good. Verse 19. Okay, no, go ahead. Verse 19.
Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk.
Okay, so you shouldn't kill or boil a kid while he's sucking his mother's milk. And the Lord is going to tell you not to even sacrifice that if you do that to him. All right, let's go to Deuteronomy 16 and verse 11. Deuteronomy 16 and verse 11. So you see the Lord call out the feast that we're supposed to keep 3 times a year, and he said this from the wilderness. Deuteronomy 16. And verse 9. 16 and 9. So the Lord is going to reinforce what he told us in Exodus 23 and 14 about his feast days. Go ahead.
7 weeks shalt thou number unto thee.
Mm-hmm.
Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn.
Right, so that before you can number it, it's got to be fully mature before you can put the sickle to the corn. You got to wait until the corn is up out of the ground and mature. Go ahead.
And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto the Lord thy God with a tribute of a freewill offering of thine hand, which thou shalt give unto the Lord thy God, according as the Lord thy God hath blessed thee.
Right, so if you never give the Lord anything on his feast days, he said, hey, don't come empty. Don't just come sit down and eat his feast. You got to bring something in your hand. Verse 11, go ahead.
And thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God, thou and thy son and thy daughter, and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite that is within thy gates, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, and that are among you in the place which the Lord thy God hath chosen to place his name there.
Right. So in the place where the Lord has chosen to place his name, like when you see, look outside, you see the sign that said the Israel of God, the Lord chose to place his name here. So this is where we have the feast, this is where we worship the Lord. See, we can't just stay home and worship the Lord if we have a church that we can attend. So the Lord wants us to come to the place where he put his name, to keep his high days and his regular Sabbath. Okay, so now let's go to, we'll finish Deuteronomy 16 and 11.
Yep, that was the end of 11.
Right, so now let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23. Remember we read in Deuteronomy 16 and 9, 7 weeks we must count. 7 weeks before you put the sickle to the corn. (23 and 9). 23 and 9. Okay, go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the firstfruits of your harvest unto the priest.
Right, so this sheaf of the first fruit represent Jesus. So Jesus is showing you himself in the old book. Remember, this was given to Moses while they were in the wilderness. They haven't gone into the land yet. Go ahead.
And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it.
Right, I want you to keep that in mind. The morrow after the Sabbath day, the priest shall wave it. The morrow after the Sabbath day. Because we're going to do the count to show you how we get Pentecost. And you have to keep that in mind. The morrow after the Sabbath day. What happened tomorrow after the Sabbath day? When Jesus had the Passover. We're going to show you that. Okay, go ahead.
And ye shall offer that day when ye have waved the sheaf and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto the Lord.
Right, so you got to offer elam without blemish. And that's why when we baptize you, when you're doing your offering, we tell you got to be clean. because you are making an offering unto the Lord. The Lord will not accept Cain offering, just like when you're doing this feast. The stuff that you offer to the Lord, it's got to be without blemish. The Lord will not accept a Cain offering. Go ahead.
That was into verse 12.
That was the end of verse 12. Let's drop down to verse 14 and go ahead.
And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your God.
Right. That's good. So Israel cannot eat no parched corn. They can't eat anything until they brought the first sheaf offering to the priest so he can wave it before the Lord. And we're going to show you the spiritual side of that. And the question may ask, so what did Israel eat back then if they couldn't eat what they plant right away? What they ate was from the old stock. So we're going to show you the spiritual side of this. So I'm going to do it a little bit different. We at 23 and 14, and I want you to hold your spot right there. Bring me up, you know what? Let's go to we're going to go to John chapter 20. I'm going to show you the spiritual side of this. John chapter 20. John chapter 20. John chapter 20. Remember, Israel could not eat nothing from that stock until they brought it and waved it in front of the priest. No, that sheaf offering represents Jesus. First, Marcus, bring me up the original resurrection of Jesus. Okay, good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to read John 20 and 1, because since Israel could not eat of the first harvest because it had to be waved before the priest to be accepted by the Lord, Jesus represents this first harvest of the first fruit to be offered up without leaven. So let's read John 1. This is the spiritual side of it. Go ahead.
The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth and cometh to Simon Peter, and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him.
Right. Go ahead.
Peter therefore went forth, and that other disciple, and came to the sepulchre. So they ran both together, and the other disciple did outrun Peter, and came first to the sepulchre.
Okay, so why did Mary did not see Jesus in the sepulchre? So now we read Leviticus 23. So Leviticus 23 set even the precedence for Jesus' resurrection. So this is the original resurrection of Jesus. So Jesus ate, if we should go use a Gregorian style calendar. So Jesus, I'm going to go Gregorian style first, and I'm going to go biblical after, just so you can get the full understanding. So Jesus eat the Passover Tuesday night. And as you can see, this represents the daytime, and you can see the color start changing. The twilight, that represents the dark coming in, representing the new day, okay? So Jesus ate the Passover Tuesday night. Wednesday in the daytime, he was crucified, right? Then just before sundown on Wednesday, they put him in the grave. Okay? So he was in the grave Thursday in the daytime, and also Thursday in the nighttime. Friday in the daytime, Friday night in the nighttime, he was still in the grave. So he was in the grave Saturday during the daytime, and he raised just before the new day coming Sunday. All right, no, I'm going to go biblical. This is Wednesday, nighttime of Wednesday. Okay? He had the Passover, because remember, how you recognize a day? The night comes first. So, go like this. So, he had the feast Wednesday night, the nighttime Wednesday, and in the daytime Wednesday, he was crucified. So 12 hours, 12 hours. And just before sundown, they put him in the grave. So he was in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. So the total time that he was in the grave was for 72 hours. But he raised just before sundown on the Sabbath. Why he had to raise? Because he is the first fruit, and he had to be waved in front of the Father to be accepted. So you couldn't raise him, he couldn't be raised on Saturday night, because that would bring in the Father's day, which is Sunday, the first day, which represents the 8 days, the 8th day, right? So he had to be raised and waved in front of the Father to be accepted. We're going to read all of that, just like the sheaf offering. Okay? All right. Let's finish that up. Let's drop down to verse 8. Let's drop down to verse 8.
Then went he in also, the other disciple, which came first to the sepulchre, and he saw and believed. For as yet they knew not the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead.
So even them been walking around with Jesus for 3.5 years, still don't get it that Jesus keep telling them, look, in 3 days, I'm going to be resurrected from the dead. But we read in Leviticus 23, that already set the precedence, because Jesus is the first fruit. He is that sheaf offering. Let's see. Drop down to verse 8. Go ahead. Keep reading.
Verse 10.
Okay.
Then the disciples went away again into their own home. But Mary stood without the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth 2 angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain.
So that simulates also the Ark of the Covenant, where the 2 angels, Jesus sit between the 2 angels. Okay, go ahead.
And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him.
Right, so in 3 days, Jesus' body was missing. She didn't know where Jesus' body was. Because the body don't take 3 days to decay and completely disappear. So somebody would have to remove that body. Even she herself didn't believe that Jesus resurrected, but go ahead.
And when she had thus said, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing and knew not that it was Jesus.
She knew not that it was him. And what he said to her?
Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou hast borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away.
Okay. Go ahead.
Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turneth herself and saith unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not.
Right, breaks. Why he told her, touch him not? Because remember, we're going to read also in Leviticus 23, where Israel could not eat none of that sheaf offering until they brought it in front of the priest. So she couldn't touch, this is a spiritual part of that. She couldn't touch Jesus because Jesus wasn't accepted yet by the Father. Go ahead. He's going to tell her.
Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God.
Right. So Jesus has to be accepted. When he has to be accepted? On the first day of the week, which represent the 8th day of the 8th day, which is tomorrow we celebrate Pentecost. So the 8th day represents the end of man, the end of all flesh. Go ahead.
Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things unto her.
Okay, where we at?
That was the end of verse 18.
Verse 18, all right. Keep going.
Then the same day at even, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst and saith unto them, Peace be upon you. And when he had so said, he showed unto them his hands and his side. Then were the disciples glad when they saw the Lord.
Go ahead.
Then said Jesus to them, Again, peace be unto you, as even my Father hath sent me, even so I send you.
Okay. Drop down to verse 26 and go ahead.
And after 8 days again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the door being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, Peace be unto you.
Right, so Jesus is showing himself, letting them know that he has resurrected and he has lived. So now, let's drop down, let's go back to Leviticus 23, where we stopped. So you see, that's the spiritual side of what we're reading in Leviticus. That's why the priests could not, that's why Israel couldn't eat any parshkan. Where we stop at?
We were in the middle of 14.
We was in the middle of 14. Okay. All right. Start 14 again and then go ahead. Start over with 14.
And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your God. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
Verse 16.
15.
Yeah, 15. Go ahead. Yes.
And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete.
Okay, so we're going to count those Sabbath days. All right, bring that up. We're going to show you how to count the Pentecost. Remember, the morrow after the Sabbath day. So we saw originally how the death and resurrection of Jesus. So the Passover happened to fall this year on what? Monday?
Monday.
Okay. So the Passover fell on Monday. Okay. So Jesus ate the Passover Monday night. And he was crucified on Tuesday. It just happened to fall on a different day. So now, remember the book said, the morrow after the Sabbath day. So we're going to count. So you got to go to the Sabbath day first. And the morrow after the Sabbath day, then you start your count. Because remember, was when the sheaf offering was waved in front of the priest. This is when Jesus was accepted by the Father. So we're going to start our count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the first Sabbath. 8, 9, 10, 11. So we are counting to 50. Pentecost, that's what Pentecost means, 50. 12, 13, 14, that's the second Sabbath. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That's the third Sabbath. Are you able to see? Okay, the third Sabbath. We've got 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. The fourth Sabbath, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, which is the fifth Sabbath, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, sixth Sabbath. 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. So this is the seventh Sabbath. So you got to count 7 Sabbath from the morrow after the Sabbath day. So you get the Pentecost. So if you're supposed to float, you're going to get the Pentecost. You're going to get the Pentecost. So that's why I went to Genesis, to show you that it's set in stone. It cannot be changed. As long as there is flesh and blood body, we have to obey the rules of and the guideline of Genesis. So 49, 50. So we get to Pentecost. So that's how we count Pentecost, which is tonight.
That's
right?
That's right.
And we're going to have the feast tomorrow. So Jesus is the first of the first fruit. So that's why Jesus tells you that the scriptures is written about him. And why are these people hating on Jesus? Especially our people. When he is the one that put all of this forward. All right, so we're going to finish that up. So you see the count. So tomorrow when Brother Bo will teach you the lesson Pentecost, it will resonate and you will understand it. And you'll know how to do the count. We stop at verse 16. Go ahead, read verse 16.
Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days.
Okay, so you have churches, name their church Pentecost, and I have no clue what Pentecost means. Pentecost means it is the year of Jubilee, it is the year of release. We're going to read all of that too. It is not a building, it is what points to the plan of God.